Hello and welcome to Cicerone Live. I'm Amy Hodkin from Cicerone Press, and thanks so much for joining us this evening for our live event that's all about hiking in Norway and Sweden. Our guests for this event, Ute Koninx and Mike Laing, are two experts in trekking in Scandinavia, and I really can't wait to talk to them very soon. So if you've joined us for one of these live events before, you'll know the run of things, but if this is your first Cicerone live event, I'm just going to run through how the event works and how you can send in your questions. So I'm going to introduce Mike and Ute, and then they've each got a short presentation about the area that's covered in their respective guidebook. So Ute will be talking about her brand new guidebook, Hiking in Norway South, and Mike will be talking about his guide, Trekking the Kungsleden. Then I'll ask them some questions, and after that, we'll move to questions from you, the audience. So there's plenty of time to think of what those questions might be during the presentations and also during my conversation with Ute and Mike. You can send your questions either by commenting directly on Facebook or YouTube, or you can email us live@cicerone.co.uk. My colleague Hannah is behind the scenes looking after all of that, and I'll put your questions to Ute and Mike for about 20 minutes towards the end of the event. And finally, a thing to make you aware of is that we are running a discount on Ute and Mike's guidebooks, which you can access by purchasing their guidebooks on the Cicerone website. The discount is for 25% off the full price of the print book, and all you need to do is type in Nordic25 when asked for a discount code at the checkout. There's already a 25% discount on lots of our ebooks, so if you'd rather have the ebook version, you can also get that for 25% off full price anyway. And this information will be on banners along the bottom of the screen throughout the event, so there's no risk of missing it. You'll be able to get those books. So I'm going to read the author bios for our guests, and then we'll add them to the stream and we'll get started. So Ute Koninx is a practiced world traveller and outdoor enthusiast and has lived in 8 countries on 4 continents. She is the author of Cicerone's new guide to hiking in Norway South, and developed a love for the Norwegian outdoors while living in the country between 2009 and 2015, and has since returned every year for her work as a tour guide, as well as further exploration and research. For more information, you can visit her website, www.iventureout.com. So that's Ute. And Mike Laing is a freelance mountaineering instructor based in Snowdonia in North Wales. He is the author of Trekking the Kungsleden and an upcoming Cicerone guidebook to hiking in Northern Norway. He completed the Kungsleden as a through hike in 2017 and visited again twice in 2018 to complete and update his research for the guidebook. Mike is a full member of the Association of Mountaineering Instructors, the AMI, and operates his own business, Snowdonia Climbing. He has travelled, climbed, trekked extensively in Greenland, South America, Africa, Europe, and the Himalaya. So 2 very experienced trekkers and outdoor enthusiasts, and yeah, they've got so much information for you. We would like to preface this whole event by saying that all this information is based on their most recent experience in Norway and Sweden, and that things may have changed since then, but that all updates for the guidebooks are available on the Cicerone website. And I imagine that things hopefully won't have changed too much in the grand, big picture things. So yeah, can't wait to get started. I'm going to add Ute and Mike now, and we'll get going. So hello.
Hi, hello.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much both for joining us. Ute, we're going to start with a little presentation that you've got about Norway.
Great.
So should we get going?
Yeah, sure. So let me share my screen, Amy, and you tell me, how things are going there.
Yes.
Everything is, works. Can you see? Can you see it,
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Good. Okay. So yeah, velkommen til Norge, as Norwegians would say. Yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to introduce you to Hiking in Norway South, the 10 best multi-day treks, the new Cicerone guidebook to hiking in Norway. I'd like to kind of first put Norway on the map, so to speak, for you. It's a country in Scandinavia, borders on the land side to Sweden, and Mike will be telling us more about that later. Has also some land border with Finland and a little bit of Russia, but on the other hand side, a long coastline. So it is very much, sort of a country that straddles two climatic zones for that reason. The Gulf Stream brings warm water along the coastline on the one hand side, and then you have the continental climate coming in from Russia, Finland, and Sweden on the other hand side. And sometimes they do battle it out on the mountaintops, so to speak. It is a very elongated country. If you would pivot it on the south point, you would almost get to Gibraltar. So just to give you an idea, also one of the reasons why we sort of at Cicerone decided to make two guidebooks out of it, so to speak. And I will be focusing on Norway South. The coastline is 25,000 kilometers long if you look at all the fjords. It is a very sparsely populated country. Has about the size, 1/3 bigger than the UK, just for comparison purposes, but only 5 million people, and which means that there's really a lot of places to go where there's hardly anybody. Most people live around the coast in the big cities like Oslo, Bergen, Trondheim, and the country has a lot of national parks and only very little arable land, which leaves even more to discover on foot or on skis or on all kinds of in kayaks, cycling. It really is an outdoor country. It is, known for the magnificent fjords and the fjells and alpine landscapes. It's a country that's been shaped by, in the last 2.5 million years by the continuous ice ages and melts and so forth. So, hiking in Norway South focuses, as said, on that bulb of the country, on the lower part. It's below the Arctic Circle. So here we do have very long summer days, but we do not have midnight sun. Nevertheless, you can, it hardly gets dark at night in summer. So, there's plenty of daylight hours to walk in. We focused the book on a number of national parks, Jotunheimen being internationally, if you like, the best known, with, of course, the highest tops in Scandinavia being Galdhøpingen and Glittertinden, with lots of glaciers, glacial lakes, moraines, scree, you name it. You walk there and you see the ice age playing out all the time. Dovrefjell and Rondane are in the middle, straddle in between Jotunheimen and Trollheimen, very different in their character. Rondane being really a mineral landscape, almost lunar, sometimes very barren. Dovrefjell, a high felspjord plateau with Snøhetta, its highest peak outside of Jotunheimen, still very much an alpine environment. And then up top, Trollheimen, the home of the trolls, very much a Norwegian favorite with mostly locals hiking in those fantastic landscapes. And, no guidebook really to southern Norway could be complete without having a fjord route. And that's what Ryfylke route number 10, the Lysefjord route, is about, where you hike around the beautiful fjord of light. Lysefjord means fjord of light. So yeah, we are, together very pleased really to present this unique English-speaking, English language guidebook, completely new and, with up-to-date information to English language readers. Norway is this hiker's paradise for a number of reasons. I mean, hard as said, very sparsely populated, mostly alpine environment, superb landscapes that are on many people's bucket list, and what I call an accessible remoteness, and I'll come to that when I describe it a little bit further, and then some fantastic treks that I will just outline for you in a little bit. But first, let me show you some photographs to because I not only want to inform you here, of course, this evening, but also motivate and inspire you to go, so to get a bit of an idea of the landscapes that you see. So here you have Trollheimen on the top left, and then Rondane up on Vestlesmeden, Glittertinden, the second highest top in Scandinavia, in Jotunheimen, and around Snøhetta, those amazing lakes, those glacier lakes that are fed by the glaciers. And here, of course, many of you will know Preikestolen in the Lysefjord, one of the best known day hikes that is part of the Lysefjord trek presented in the book. And then Langlupdalen here with Rondeslottet, which is the castle of Rondane, the highest mountain in Rondane in the background, and this beautiful Langlupbecken waterfall here. And then one of my favorite huts in Dovrefjell. Maybe we'll have some time to talk about the huts as well in a little bit more detail. I already saw that there were some questions around that. This one is in Almotsdalen, where you would, sort of come down towards if you had hiked Snøhetta. Yes, this picture here with the hikers makes me smile a little bit, because the editor, I think it was Andrea at the time, said to me, you do need to make photos of hikers when you are hiking. And we would get into position. I did all these hikes with my husband, get into position to try and capture hikers that would pass. And in fact, the hiker that is on top of the cover was actually the first hiker that we saw that day up on the Bessingen Ridge. So it's you can sometimes really hike for many hours without seeing a soul. Yeah, accessible remoteness, that's what I call accessible wilderness in Norway. What is it about? So, Norway is this beautiful, amazing country, but also with a population that loves the outdoors, that really has embraced the outdoors as sort of their national identity. And that means that they put a lot of effort into that there are many associations, about, sort of 50 that together form an umbrella organization, the Norwegian Trekking Association. And they have marked about 20,000 kilometers of trails. The Norwegian Map Authority has great maps, so there's a great infrastructure for hikers to use. Of course, you need to be able to read maps and find your way around, but in that sense, there's many options that you would have. They also make it possible to access many of those entry points by public transport. And in fact, I made it one of my aims with this new guidebook to ensure that was the case, that you didn't necessarily need a car to go, but that you could go and take buses and trains and just start your hike from there. Sometimes with a little walk before, but not too much. In fact, there's the Dovrefjell Traverse, where you can just literally step out of the train and start your hike. And then there's a varied options in terms of accommodation and where to spend the night, and that's sort of what this next slide talks a little bit about. The Norwegian Trekking Association, the DNT, runs about 550 mountain huts, and then you also have some private people that sometimes have run these mountain lodges and huts for quite a few generations, like in Splitterstulen in Jotunheimen, the third generation running it. So the treks presented in the guidebook are in principle treks that take you from hut to hut. But camping is also very much a possibility. And in fact, the photo below shows that. We did that on some of those because you do have the right to roam in Norway, and that means that you can go wild camping. There are some responsibilities and, of course, some rules attached to that, but it is very much possible. So you really have here different options that, in the sense you can have the holiday that you want. You can either go light with a backpack that is not so heavy and go hut to hut, or you can choose for sort of a more adventurous approach and do the wild camping, which means you do take a little bit more luggage with you, obviously. And so, what is it that you can choose from here in hiking in Norway? Southeast 10 treks, what are they? Just as a very broad overview, they are between 3 and 8 days long. 3 and 8 day stages. Some of them have extensions, and then they are between 41 and 152 kilometers long. And the different stages on every day, you'd can expect to walk between 10 and 24 kilometers. Now, this doesn't tell you anything about the terrain underfoot, of course, and the elevation, but just to give sort of a general idea. The aim was to have really a wide range and diverse range of hikes that, on the one hand side, incorporate those well-known, Instagrammable, if you like, hikes that people know Norway. If you Google hiking in Norway, the 10 best will come up every time or something like that. And there's sort of a list that, sort of repeats itself a little bit. But, they are there for a reason, and they are there because they are, very beautiful and very amazing hikes. But then also very much having, those little and lesser known gems, and sometimes very much in one trek where, one day you really hike and you don't see a soul, and the next day you're kind of on top of Preikestolen and see a lot of people, or on top of Guidebook and see a lot of people, but the day after that, maybe a dozen. The other aim was for hikers to be able to combine, to devise their own holiday adventure. So, there's very many possibilities to go to different areas and just take a shorter trek there, or you can really literally almost hike for a whole month and do the whole book in one very, very long summer, so to speak. The book is organized very much like every Cicerone guidebook, where there's an introduction to Norway, and then each region is introduced and the highlights given. And then each stage, each route is introduced very much in detail. And you can also download the actual GPX tracks from the Cicerone website as well. So, that all together should give you very much an opportunity to devise the hiking holiday that, is very much your own, that adjusts to your needs and wishes, to the time frame that you have and the experience. In general, I would say you need good resources, you need good maps, preferably a good guidebook. You need good equipment. So, weather-wise, you can encounter rain, sunshine, fog, the whole range of alpine experiences. So don't be confused by the fact that, the highest mountain, Guidebook, is just under 2,500 meters. Because you're so high in latitude in Northern Europe, it does mean that, the weather is very much alpine. And so you do need to be prepared for a wide range of weather situations, and you do need, a reasonable amount of fitness to be able to carry, the backpack of your choice, be it the one from hut to hut, or, heavier if you go with all your equipment, including tent, sleeping bag, and food. Yeah, so that's my presentation. I was already seeing there were questions coming in, so I'm very much looking forward to answering those. And I give now back to Amy.
Thank you so much, Ute. Seeing your photos is just so inspiring. And I know there's plenty more in the guidebook as well, of really brilliant photos. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was going to ask you a follow-up question, and then we'll go to Mike. So if you had to pick, say you've never been to Norway before, and this book has various different treks in, which one would you kind of suggest that people try first?
You know, this is a very unfair question, because I could only put in 10 treks in there. And I do believe that, you could pick any one of those and you'd have a fantastic time. And my hope would be that you would want to come back for more, so to speak. And then it comes really down to, figuring out how much time you have, and what your level of experience is, what the landscapes are that you want to see. If you're really an alpine person and want to collect tops about 2,000 meters, then I would say, do Jotunheimen and Rondane. If the fjordscapes are your thing, then I'd say, do the Lysefjord circuit. It's not going to be any less challenging, even if you're not going so high, because you're constantly going up and down. So it reminds me of, sort of one of your earlier podcasts where they were talking about the south-west coast part, where it also goes up and down. And if you competed, you've done Everest 8 times, So it's a bit of that. And then Trollheimen is, such a Norwegian favorite, where you'll be hiking among locals. So it is a little bit what you, where you would then put your own wish, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But I would say you wouldn't go wrong trying any of those, really. We call them the 10 best for a reason. So yeah. That would be my answer to that. Yeah.
I think that's a perfect answer, really. Yeah. So Mike, should we go to Sweden now and look at the Kungsleden?
Aye. There we go. Just get my screen up.
Yes, lovely. And I'm going to ask you afterwards, because obviously this is a longer trek, which section you'd say people should choose if they've only got, say, a week.
Okay.
So we can talk about that afterwards.
Okay, can you see my photo?
Yes.
Yes.
There we go.
Okay, fantastic. So the Kungsleden, or the King's Trail, is 460 kilometer long trail in northern Sweden. It's an end-to-end trail, so it's a different beast to a multitude of trails that Ute mentioned. And half of it is north of the Arctic Circle. So what you can expect if you go in the middle of the summer is 24 hours daylight, and the excitement that brings. And if you go at the other end of the season, say if you go right at the beginning of the season or the end of the season, you may be able to see some of the aurora borealis. So there are extremes in this part of the world when you're up near the Arctic. The trail is split into 5 sections, and it was conceived, the trail, in the early 20th century, and it's grown in a southerly direction to its current terminus in Hemavan. So the trail is split up into 5 sections, from Abisko in the north down to Vakatavari, and then it picks up again at Saltoluokta, and the second section goes down to Kvikkjokk, and then the third section heads down to Jakvik, fourth section down to Ammernes, and the final section down to Hemavan. And you will go through a variety of landscapes. The first section and the final section are the most mountainous and the least forested, and then the central 3 sections really are more forest, rolling fell, open fell, and lakes. But lakes and rivers are found across the entire Kungsleden. And what with, you're going to experience superb landscapes and vast open skies. And this is a photo of the second section between Abisko and Ales. And what you can also see here is, the trail is very user-friendly. It's well provisioned, and materially, it's looked after by the local counties, Norrbotten in the northern half of the trail and Västerbotten down in the south. So whenever it's boggy or anything, they've put a small bridge in, a log bridge. If it's a bigger river, there's a steel bridge. Or if it's just boggy ground, they put these boardwalks down. And if you're eagle-eyed, when you're walking along, you will see lemmings every now and then scurrying under the boardwalks. So a variety of landscapes, forest, open fell, mountain, and there's a lot of variety in colour coming from different angles on the Kungsleden. So the first section, the second section, and the most southerly section are all provisioned with huts, and these are manned huts and provide a good level of service. And these are manned by Stugvards, hut wardens. And I'll introduce here now an entity called the STF, which is the Svenska Turistföreningen, which is the Swedish Tourist Association. And they provide the huts on these three sections. Another element of colour on the Kungsleden are the boats, and there are 7 mandatory boat crossings to be made if you're going to do the whole trail. And the STF provide rowing boats on 4 of these crossings, and other places they provide motorboats, and sometimes you get private operators providing boats as well. So this is Akse, which is one of my favourite places on the trail. And these people are walking from the hut in Akse, actually, a kilometre down to the waterline to get the motorised boat crossing across to the other side. The huts themselves, we'll probably talk more about that, but you know, you can provision here, you can sleep there, you can have a bastu, which is a sauna. And it's a great way to soothe your walking muscles at the end of the day. That's a very similar photo to what was in Ute's presentation, actually. And the landscapes are just stunning. I'll confess that I'd never been to Sweden before I went to research this guidebook. And I was just gobsmacked the whole way. And it was such an adventure. And that's heading towards the chapter past more boardwalks. And it was just such an adventure because of the landscapes, the community feeling in the huts, and because of the people you met on the way. I thought the Swedes were so engaging, so funny, and I just had such a great time. So I was really surprised. I went there for the trekking experience and to enjoy the landscape, but actually I was really taken aback by the human side to the Kungsleden, the community spirit. And yeah, I think that was one of the great joys of the Kungsleden, and I think that's probably an enduring feature, that whenever you go, you will meet like-minded people who want to share their experiences, and they were such funny people as well. So there's a variety of people here. These 2 guys, bottom left, were a couple of university students. They had hardly done any trekking before in their life. They were students from Stockholm, and they were stopped halfway through the day, and these guys were cooking pancakes for their lunch. So they invited me to stop and have pancakes with them. And yeah, it's just those little experiences make it really special. So I think that's enough of an intro, really. I've got more photos that I can elaborate on later, but it's just a great adventure and an experience.
That's wonderful, Mike. Thank you. And it would be nice to talk a bit more later about the human side of the Kungsleden, and oh, there we go. Yeah, and of these hiking routes,
yeah.
And how popular they are. But so if you did have to choose one section, say you've only got a week,
yes.
Which section would you pick?
Okay, I've got a map because I was anticipating. So you can see that?
Yes, there we go.
Okay,
it's quite
so
small,
that's, I'll enlarge that. So that's the whole Kungsleden, starting north in Abisko and down to Hemavan. And I would say to people, if you've never been here before and you've got limited time, go and do the northern section. And here it is in blow up. So if you're going to do the whole trail, you would go Abisko down to Vakatavare, get the bus, which is indicated by the green line, and pick up at Salto Luotka. But you could also, and there's an alternative itinerary in the guide, at Singi, you can turn east and you can go via Kebnekaise Fjall Station out to Nikkaluokta. And that allows you, it's a very easy journey to make. You can do this in a week. You can fly to Sweden and fly up to Kiruna, get the train to Abisko, walk the circuit, get the bus out from Nikkaluokta back to Kiruna and catch a flight again. So it's very convenient in terms of that delivery. The mountain landscape is amazing, and you get into the mountains quite early. And also, it's well provisioned with huts. So if you want to go lightweight, you hardly have to take anything. You can get bed in the huts, you can get food in the huts, and you go super lightweight. If that's not your style, you can just camp between the huts and take the best of what the huts have to offer in terms of stopping off, getting rid of litter and rubbish, etc. But yeah, this is what I would recommend, the northern section, either through to Vakavitari or even more conveniently do the loop to Nikkaluokta, and that can be done either direction.
I think it's brilliant that you've chosen the northern section and then your next guidebook is to Northern Norway.
Yeah.
I think clearly liking the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, and this landscape, I've done lots of trips to Greenland, the western coast of Greenland in summer, and it was so similar to northern Sweden. It was uncanny.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, you've both mentioned the huts and kind of touched on accommodation, but I thought because the question that I have, because I've never been hiking in Norway or Sweden, but I have been trekking in the Alps. So I wondered how these compare, huts in these places compare to, say, huts in the Alps, and what sort of facilities they provide. So it's the DNT huts in Norway, Ute, and then Sweden, it's the STF huts.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, do you want me to say a little bit about that?
Yes. Yeah. Would you like to start, Ute? Thank you.
Great. So, to some extent, they seem quite similar to the ones in Sweden. Only in Norway, you have, in fact, 3 different types of huts. Some of them are almost run like lodges, particularly sort of in the summer season. So there you can get all food. So you come in after your hike in the afternoon, and there will be dinner served, and you can get a breakfast, and then make yourself a lunch to take on the next day or for the trail. And you do hut to hut, and then in the next hut it's a bit like that too. Then there is huts that are where you self-provision and self-cook. So they'll have a pantry with things that you can take out, sort of your spaghetti and tomato sauce, pancake mix, milk, sugar, tea, all kinds of canned fruits and vegetables. And it's an honesty system. You take things out, either on an app or on paper, you mark what you've taken, and you're then sort of charged on your card later on. Those are called, self-catering huts. They also have, in the sleeping rooms, so to say, which are communal most of the time, you will find pillows and quilts. So you are required always, also in the lodges, to bring your own sleeping liner or sleeping bag. For hygiene reasons. But, other than that, it's like what Mike was saying, it allows you to go lightweight with these huts. And then there's huts as well, and you'll find those in northern Norway, probably, Mike, more, where it's unserviced. So you do have all the cooking utensils that you need. You have, again, the quilts and pillows in the huts, but there's no pantry. So here it means that you are welcome to use, you write yourself in and everything, but you do need to bring your own food for those. And in southern Norway, on the treks presented, there's a few of those, but not too many. It's there more of a mix. In southern Norway, you often have the most likely the self-service, where you have the pantry or the lodges. Some of the lodges will close after the high summer season, and then they will run a self-service one. So you then go to the pantry, and then you're allowed to make yourself a meal there. You're not obliged to actually sort of buy the full board option. Many of these huts will require you to have the universal key. And so, you know, in that sense, it's already a good idea to become a member, because only as a member you can, you know, sort of order and pick up, you know, the key for these huts. Not all of them, but yeah, again, you know, either in your research or, you know, in the book, you would find which of these huts require a key. So that's sort of the situation in Norway. When you have the huts that are run privately, they always run like lodges. They will close at the end of the summer. And as a D&T member, you will generally get a discount on their fees there. So they offer between a 5 and 10% discount on the accommodation and the board. So with the lodges, you can choose a little bit as to, you know, what the pricing is. If you want a smaller room with fewer people, then that will generally be more expensive. If you're happy to sleep in a wider with more people, then, you know, that's generally a less a more economical option. So yeah, so that's from Norway, and I give to Mike to describe the Swedish situation, so to say.
Okay, cool. I'll probably put photos up actually as I speak, which will help.
I think it's really helpful seeing photos.
So
yeah.
You see that photo?
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, so the Kungsleden, to recap, I said the first, the second and the fifth sections of the trail are fully furnished with STF huts, and this is a typical STF hut. And they have stugvads, and they offer it can be quite pricey to stay here. So if you are going to avail yourself of the huts, I would highly recommend you join the STF before you head out, because you get discounts on staying at the huts or camping at the huts. So on one extreme, you can have full fat, which means you turn up with virtually nothing. So unlike alpine huts, they don't cook food for you here. You can only buy and prepare it yourself, but there is kitchen. So this is a typical kitchen in a hut. And I think you can just make out in the rear of the center of this photo, you can just see into a dormitory. So, you know, the bunk beds furnished. So if you were to stay at a hut and buy the food at the hut, I think I have a picture of a shop. Bear with me. It's not. There we go. This is what's classified as a large shop. So this is about as good as it gets in a hut on the trail. If you were to turn up at a hut, buy your food, i.e. something for dinner that day, something for breakfast, and something as a packed lunch on the trail, and you paid to stay in the hut, you're looking north of £50, £50 plus for that. And over, say, 10 days, that's going to add up. The other alternative is you can camp besides a hut and buy the food there. That obviously makes it a lot cheaper. Or you could be carrying your own food and you just pay to camp by the hut, and you'll pay a minimal fee, and that will give you access, though, to the sauna. I had a sauna picture, didn't I? To the bastu. Or even lighter still, if you remember the STF, you could just pass through the hut in the middle of the day. You're allowed day visitor rights as a member, so you don't pay, but you can use the kitchen there, get rid of your rubbish, use the shop, all those sort of things. What I did a few times was I camped, but not by the hut, so I didn't pay, and I just came in the evening and paid a minimal fee for the sauna. The huts, the current slide, we have fjallstuga or huts, and they're out on the trail. And at the end and beginning of sections, you have fjall stations, and these are much larger. This is the one in Kvikjok. So these are booked through the STF website. And for a fjall station, it's more like a hotel. So you are booking a bed on a particular date, and you've got to turn up on that date. It's not very flexible because there's just high demand. Out on the trail, a fjallstuga, when you book, you specify a date, but you're really just buying a voucher. So if you were to turn up a week early or a week later than the date you'd booked, they would still let you in. They claim that they never turn anyone away. So when all the bunks are filled, they just got extra mattresses and they put them down on the floor. So there's flexibility built in, even if you're booking into a Fjallstuga. It's more a voucher than tying you down to a particular date. And there's water always at the huts. Nearly every hut has a shop. Some have what's called a medium, some have a large. And Sweden is a cashless society virtually now. So nearly every hut accepts card and probably would prefer card. When I was last through, the only STF hut that didn't take card was Porte on the section between Kvikkjokk and Jakvik. And I bet that now is also electronically wired up. So that's a quick run through the huts, really, certainly in Sweden on the Kungsleden.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, Mike. We've got a question kind of following up on booking, asking how far in advance should huts be booked? Just this person thinking about trails in Iceland where you have to book basically a year in advance.
Is that for me?
Yes.
Yes. So I explained that out on the trail, between the section ends at the Fjallstuga, you're basically buying a voucher. So there's complete flexibility. You could buy it a month in advance. It's basically a voucher. They won't tie you down. The Stugvards will not say, oh, you're here 3 days early. So you could buy it well in advance. You're buying a voucher, really. But for the Fjall stations, it's like a hotel. So that's really down to personal choice, really. Once you know you're going, I'd get in there early. But they do have large capacities. We're talking, I think Kebnekaise has something like 120 bed spaces, maybe more.
And is that the same in Norway, Ute?
Norway is a little bit different. I mean, these days you can now book in advance, through the DNT website. You can book a certain bed in a cabin, and you then have the right to that bed until 7 o'clock in the evening, say, for instance. But there's also, sort of always flexibility, well, outside of the current situation, but always they will never turn you away. So they'll always, find a bed. I mean, in fact, one time, some of these huts can be busy. And one time, they made space in the utility room for me, putting mattresses there, taking all the cleaning equipment out and putting mattresses there. So they are really, in that sense, flexible. But you can book them in advance. And I would say again, for maybe the bigger huts where that they indeed have capacity, sort of 50 beds, that type of. And upwards, where then you can, or they are at the start of the trail. If you're going, and if you're going to be there that day, then by all means make a booking, and you can do that. But you will actually never really be turned away in Norway. There's always space for more people, so to speak. In that sense, so far, which makes it, I don't know, just absolutely so special in that respect. The lodges in Jotunheimen, where you have, because it's sort of more you have more international travelers there and hikers. I would say if you're coming and you've made your route, by all means do book. But it's not compulsory, and you're not. It's a little bit different to Iceland. I've been to Iceland, so it's not. There's no capacity. Let's say it like that. In Norway, than there would be in Iceland. Really, there's the huts in Iceland are very different. They're very small. In Norway, really, the pictures are basically what Mike said. You showed with the bunk beds and the kitchens, and it's a little bit more spacious.
Brilliant. I realise that we've talked for quite a while about huts, but I think it is important for people to know, where they're going to be staying and how the whole system works. Mike, you mentioned the kind of expense of, using the shops at the huts and how expensive it can get. And Ute, I know you wrote a brilliant article that's on the Cicerone website all about kind of budgeting tips. But I wondered, kind of quickly, if you have any, specific tips to help people with budgeting. Ute, do you want to go first?
Again, it's about if you want to go lowest budget, I would say do take your tent. And one of the questions I saw, somebody asked whether I was using an MSR tent. I was. And so then you have maximum flexibility. You can go shopping at the entry points, and that way you will really sort of be the most economical when you go and tent. It also means you need more luggage, and you're carrying more kilos, and you need to take the food along. It's a bit also what Mike said. You can use sort of the best of the huts. You can even sort of maybe bivvy or use the tent and just use the facilities when you really, really need them. When it's gotten really, it's rained all day and you desperately need the drying room and you want a warm bed that night, then you treat yourself to that. So you have that flexibility. If you go and renounce alcohol for the time that you're in Norway, that will make you're looking 10 pounds for a glass of wine or a pint of beer. So that does make a difference on the budget if you're prepared to not do that for whatever time you're there.
And probably better for walking as well.
That as well, although they go down nicely on it at the end of the day. There's that sort of and taking out the D&T membership will buy you discounts. So those are really sort of my main tips. And going, choosing a route where you can stay in the self-serviced or unserviced huts. So if you choose a route that is, sort of like that, you can cater for yourself more, and that becomes less expensive.
Brilliant. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Mike?
No, but I'd mainly echo Ute's point there about the tent. Sleeping in the Fjallstuga is the main expense. So if you took a tent, you're getting lots of other things by taking a tent, which is flexibility. So if you are wholly reliant on the huts, you are wholly dependent on getting to that hut every day. So I think if you carry a tent, you can still make use. You could still buy your food in the huts. And then you're not carrying the weight of the food every day either. So you're just carrying a tent, but making it much cheaper. And I suppose out on the trail, you never know when the weather's going to turn really bad, and you might have another 10 kilometers to the hut. If you've got a tent and a sleeping bag, you can just pitch your tent. So the variables differ for every person. So if you're a complete novice going to this semi-remote area, you may have to go hut to hut, and you might not want to carry the weight, and then so you're not really sidestepping the cost. But if you could take a tent, that would be the main thing, and you can camp at the hut and get all the other benefits, including the bastu, the sauna.
Yeah, well, that's a little different in Norway. If you're not wild camping, if you're near the hut, you do need to pay a little bit in Norway for that. But I would say, same as Mike, it's a different adventure, a different experience. One is the lightweight and, having the safety net. The other one with the tent is, $1 million views every day by yourself and anywhere in where there's nobody there. And it's just very different. So really, both have their charm, because in the community that you have in the huts is also just absolutely lovely. It's very special. Like in Amundstalen, I was there with hunters. They had collected mushrooms and they were frying up the heart of the reindeer that they had shot that day. It's something like, it's also worth, it's very different experiences. So And I think, that's also something I say to people when they talk about the budget. It is, yes, Scandinavia is expensive, but you get something that is very special that you don't get anywhere else. And so maybe it's worth just saving a little bit more up for it and then enjoying that to the fullest.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely lovely sentiment. Yeah, and I think what does put people off probably is the cost. But if there are ways around it, I think that's brilliant. And if it's worth the money, then Mike, we've got a follow-up question about camping on the Kungsleden. From your pictures, it looks like much of the Kungsleden is above the tree line. For those of us who want to camp the whole way, is finding cover from strong winds a problem?
No. And when I went and researched this, I love camping. I love sleeping in my tent. So I didn't sleep in a hut much. No. Once, actually, just so I could say I did it. So there was a big emphasis when I wrote my guide about people who wanted to wild camp. So I deliberately have identified the last place you can camp where there's a water source above the tree line, and that means away from the worst of the biting insects before you get to a hut. So people could plan ahead. And it's true, most of the Kungsleden is above the tree line, and there's a breeze up there and it's less insect prone. But the guidebook identifies campsites for wild campers, and I've met all the criteria they'd need, i.e. water, and it's flat and it's pitchable. Some of them would be hit by the wind because they're above the tree line. But that's the risk you take. It's a very open fell above the tree line. Yeah.
Brilliant. And we've got another question about when is the best time to go to avoid mosquitoes? And actually, maybe we should start by saying when is the hiking season in Scandinavia. So Ute, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so in the, in Ryfylke, so around the Lysefjord, it starts a little bit earlier. You could go there, early July. But in general, many of the hiking trails have bridges. And so you have to wait until the season starts and, the bridges over some of these, rivers have been put in. So really the hiking season, Jotunheimen and above, is sort of mid-July until mid-September. Really, I can count the days when, in all the 10 years I've been hiking there, where mosquitoes bothered me. I don't know. There's 2 days maybe, and I don't know. I think maybe, towards the east, towards Røros, there might be more when you are more in the forested areas. But again, many of, most of the time, you're also in my guidebook, you would be above the tree line. And so there's not many mosquitoes. What I would say is, the main pest you need to be aware of are the ticks. And I would always say, take a sort of tick remover with you and know how to use it. Again, I've used it twice in 10 years, but it's important to take, any tick out immediately. So, and otherwise it's, the occasional other, snake that you will see. But, other than that, mosquitoes haven't bothered me there at all in these areas. So can't really say much about that. And I do know they can be, I've hiked Scotland, and so, well, they are not they're midges. So, so no comparison. And there's going to be always, it's very rare that it's totally wind still anyway. So yeah, can't say that ever was an issue for me in Norway, in southern Norway. So.
Mosquito free then.
So for the Kungsleden, the summer season really is allied with when the STF huts open, and that's mid-June till towards third, fourth week in September. So the STF will open their huts at that time, and possibly more importantly, that's when they put the STF boats in on the water crossings. So it's not really viable as a route outside those, unless you go and do it as a winter route. Of course, there's a whole separate winter season. My guidebook's a summer one. So that is the main season. And the best time to avoid the insects would be at the very beginning of that season or at the very end, when the temperatures are colder, because that's what they can't survive. They need it to be warm. But it's not just about timing in terms of the season. It's about what you do and where you decide to sleep. So, as I said before, trying not to sleep within the tree line or near still water. So I've been there what's supposed to be the peak of the insect season, and I wasn't bothered much. But I did have a couple of nights where it was hell. So one of those was at Beverholmen, which is a beautiful place. And I stopped there because the Vardhouse did cooked food. So I thought, okay, I'll camp here tonight. But it was near flat water and it was hellish. So when I was in my tent, I wanted to make a cup of coffee. I basically had my hands, I was in the inner tent, I had my hands sticking out the bottom of the mesh screen on the door, making the coffee on the other side, because, I mean, they were vicious. So when they hit you bad, they hit you bad. Yeah.
It's really interesting that you've both had quite differing experiences with it.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find another question. What are the costs for the boat crossings?
Oh, wow. That varies hugely.
Vary? Yeah.
Yeah. And I would probably have to look at in my guide for that. So the most expensive crossing is one where there is no STF provision. So that's the crossing of the Ribnes on the final day into Jakvik. And there is only a private service there. And it's a long crossing as well. And you're better off ringing a couple of days in advance. And my guidebook says where you can just catch a signal to ring ahead with the Johanssons who run that service. So that will be about £45 now, that crossing. So that's the top end.
Right.
So that's quite pricey. And sometimes you have to wait a long time there because he also does clienting and hunting for other people. So he's not always there to take you across. That's why you should ring in advance. So you can either speed up or slow down. So you're not spending too much time at Vuonatiken, which is where the boat leaves from.
I think going through both of your guidebooks, one of the things that I thought was kind of really special was the river crossings, whether that's kind of walking across them or going on bridges or taking the boats. I don't know how common that is kind of in alpine trekking. By comparison, it does seem quite a Scandinavian thing, and seems quite special. So
can I just say as well
yes.
that the STF card will give you discount on crossings where there are STF motorized services in place. The rowing boats are free, obviously, but it would not only discount the huts, it discounts the STF motorized services where they are.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah. So I think we're going to have to kind of wrap up there. We're almost out of time.
Wow.
But I wanted to ask you kind of a final question each. So Ute, you return to Norway every year when you can for hiking. But what is it about Norway that you love and keep going back to?
Well, first of all, my work, I love being a guide there. And if I get the chance, I'd be there again next year. And then there's so many things, really, Amy. The light there, the sense of freedom, with having that right of access. You can make the adventure that you want. You can have it with a safety net, or you can, try it out and be self-reliant. When you go out, it's remote. I mean, the huts might have all the comforts you need, but in between you're by yourself. And there will not be sort of a lunch spot or a pub or anything like that. So I think that makes it very different to, other hiking areas where you have sort of, culture and heritage around it. Here, it's really you and nature. And you and the elements, and you can make it, sort of as exciting and exhilarating and adrenaline full as you like. And so, that's been part of my journey where, Norway has really made me more intrepid with every year, and I've tried new things, and there's always more. And so it just pulls me back.
Thank you so much. And Mike, we've obviously been talking about the Kungsleden and Sweden, but you are gearing up to write the book to hiking in Northern Norway. When we can travel again. What are you most looking forward to when you can get out there?
Well, it's probably going to be the first long distance trekking I'm doing post-COVID. So that in itself is just so exciting. When I was in Sweden, Sweden's a fantastic country, fantastic people. But when I was in Sweden, everyone's going, "Oh, you must go to Norway." So I'm expecting great things of Norway. But the thing, so I'm doing the top half is I'm looking forward to going to the Lofoten Islands, which will be fantastic, and doing the Finnmarksvidda up in the north. So that looks like a very special area. And I think there's probably going to be vast vistas there, and that feeling of remoteness is probably most acute up there, I think. I don't know if you've been there, Ute.
Not yet. But
so it's famous for ranger movements in winter, herding.
Yes,
but the Finnmarksvidda, I think the Finnmarksvidda is going to be the highlight for me. Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely amazing. And I think this event has just made me so desperate to go and just, partly just to get out and, go somewhere, because we're all not able to do that at the moment. But yeah, it has just been so inspiring and so lovely to, hear all your stories and see the photos. So yeah, thank you both so much for joining me this evening. It's been absolutely wonderful. So yeah, to the audience, this is all we've got time for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thanks to Ute, thanks to Mike. I hope you, the audience, have found it inspiring as well. There's the discount that you can use on the website that has been going along the bottom. So that's Nordic 25 for a discount on either guidebook or both. Just use that at the checkout. And yeah, we're going to be back in a month with another live event, and you can find all of the information about that on cicerone.co.uk/live. And you can also listen to our podcast, where we've got lots of other interviews with authors and guests. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll hopefully see you soon.
Thank you, Amy.